Hey everyone, this is Lesley Rieland with Greater Than These International, and we're just finishing up a weekend. We had a great weekend up by Bemidji, Minnesota, with some wonderful people. Kelly and I went and we ministered alongside another couple, Jake and Rachel Beaudry. It was a wonderful time. And just as this evening is closing, I just felt like I needed to share on a video again. It's been a while, and there's been some things just kind of brewing in me. So I don't know about you guys, but I sometimes look at myself and realize I can be a really slow learner. And there's things that God has tried to teach me, and we need to revisit. And God has this wonderful way of gently correcting you, telling you you're wrong, and you realize you're kind of an idiot in the process. But, I also know I'm not alone in that. So if you have ever felt that way, you can now hear my story. And then it really develops into the broader message that I've been sharing over and over again, and that's on intimacy. So today's message is ultimately going to be on intimacy and then sonship. And I'd like to start because about a month back, there was a gentleman from Scotland, Prophet Alan Ross, I believe his name was, and he came and he had a word for me. And, you know, I was listening to all these words he had over everyone else, and it was so amazing. And my word was amazing too, but there was one part of it, and he spoke over me about a prophetic gifting, and he said it's just beginning. It's this prophetic gifting is being birthed in you. And I can sometimes take things to the Lord, and what he means to be completely positive, somehow we as humans can put a negative spin on it. So this isn't going to be my point, but it's going to lead into what God was showing me, and just, I guess, showing you my own weaknesses in the process of it. So I took this to the Lord, and I was kind of complaining. I thought, I've been a Christian for almost 2 decades now, and man, I've just really pressed into seeking your gifts, especially prophecy, as the Bible teaches. And I feel like I've grown a lot in it. I'm stepping out and asking for specifics, and I'm even getting specifics. And so here I am, grumbling to the Lord about why, what are you telling me this is just the beginning for? And the Lord very gently told me, why are you, taking this negatively? Because that's just an indication of how much more I have for you. So don't take it as in, wow, you're just a baby in this, but God is so much bigger than I can even comprehend. And this is just the beginning. So really it's like this amazingly powerful word for me when I see it now. But the main correction that the Lord brought me around the mountain one more time, and I even talk about it frequently, and yet I myself still need to learn the lesson and be reminded, is that I had this mindset that I was working so hard. Like, look, I spent the last 2 decades working to get this gift developed. And it's really a wrong mindset about working. So, we're not supposed to be working for the gifts of God. The gifts of God are just a flow out of relationship. So here I am, I'm talking about all this, and then I fall into the same trap, that same mindset. So just to encourage anyone else that falls into that same mistake. But, the Lord really highlighted this one parable years ago, and he reminded me of it again. And it's in Luke 15. It is the parable, let me find my place here. It's the parable of the prodigal son, and it's very popular, so you probably know this. See if I'm skilled enough to hold a phone here and read a Bible at the same time. But so this son demands his inheritance. And so he takes it and he just absolutely squanders it on wild living, right? And then falls into a state of poverty. Here he is hungry. And so I'm in Luke 15, and I'll just start at verse 17. It says, "When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.'" So I'm going to pause right there and just say, so many of us have a servant mentality when we're supposed to have a son mentality. Ladies, you're a son too. I'm sorry, they don't actually say sons and daughters, but I heard one person joke one time that if men have to be called the bride of Christ, then we can be called sons of God. So I thought that was kind of funny. So really, so many of us get focused on do. What are we doing? Like I was focused on, Lord, I've been working towards developing this gift for almost 2 decades now. Well, we're not supposed to be in the mindset of doing. Doing is like servants. We're supposed to be in the mindset of being, and being is like the sonship. So you might argue, well, we are supposed to do stuff for the Lord. But when you are in a state of being, then the doing comes. It's kind of like the faith in the works, right? So some might say we're saved apart from works by faith. But then the same is said, if you actually have faith, then you're going to have the works. So you're going to show your faith by your works, because faith without works is dead. It's not actually true faith. So when you are being in the relationship and you know your sonship, then you are going to be the doing. It's just going to flow because you're abiding in him. So I'm going to continue on, and I'll point out what my tendency has been. So we have this father, and he sees his son coming back to him. And it says, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf. So they're going to throw this whole banquet for this son. So this father does not receive the prodigal son back and say, well, sure, I'll feed you. You can work as my servant. No, he puts the very family ring back on his finger, gives him a robe, and there's going to be a banquet. So the older son, who's been faithful this whole time, is seeing this whole thing. He's seen I'll say, disgusting way the younger brother had treated his father, in the fact that he actually demanded his inheritance before his father was dead. I mean, that's really about as rude as it gets. And it says the older brother became angry. I'm skipping down to verse 28 right now. And refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. And this is the key that has been for me time and time again that the Lord reminds me of. In verse 31, it says, My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. So How powerful is that? Most people focus on the fact that the prodigal son is accepted with joy, not as a servant, but as a son. But I also want to point out just the wrong mindset that the older son had. Here he is, he's with his father all the time. He's not doing anything wrong, and yet he's not really realizing what he has. Because the father says, "Son, you're with me all the time, and everything I have is yours." So, how many times do we as Christians get so caught up in whether we are being the good Christians, whether we are being faithful? And trust me, I want to be called the good and faithful servant. So, there's an element of that once again in wanting to serve and do the purpose and be about your Father's business, right? But we need to be doing that service out of a state of sonship. So, I was at this meeting, like I said, over by Bemidji, and we were teaching on a lot of it was on abiding and letting the Lord work things out of you instead of working towards them. And I won't get into that so much, but one thing the Lord had me ask the group, and I warned them, I said, this is a trick question. But when it talks in Romans chapter 8, and it says that the creation is eagerly awaiting, I said, is it eagerly awaiting the servants of God? And there was, some pause. And like I said, this is a trick question. And one gentleman who I really got to know and respect in the group, amazing man, he thought and he said, well, it waits for the sons of God. And I said, yes. So, if the earth itself knows the difference between who it needs to await, it's not awaiting just servants, because if we have a servant mentality, then we are not going to be knowing our inheritance. We're not going to be operating to the fullness that God wants us to operate in. So even creation itself is eagerly awaiting the sons of God to be revealed. I'm going to just read a couple other verses just to hammer down and let you know that you were created for relationship. And your service to God is out of love within that relationship. So again, operating just naturally out of the flow of love. I know that Jake, when we were there, the other couple, he quoted, I think it was Heidi Baker. Sorry if I get this quote wrong, Jake, but he said that the person working out of love will always outwork just the regular worker. And I'm pretty sure I just absolutely tortured that quote because I wasn't planning on quoting it right now. But the point is, when you're doing something out of love, you're going to be able to outwork any regular worker because it's done out of a place of abundance. It's done with an automatic place of conviction. It's not an obligation. It's a desire in you. And that's the right motive of the heart. That's the kind of thing, it says our works are going to be put through fire and tested. That's the kind of thing that's going to remain. That's the gold in the work that we do. So Ephesians 1:5, it says, he predestined us for adoption as sons through Jesus Christ. And in Galatians 4, it says that we might receive adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So you are no longer slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. So all the things that you want to see happen in your life, I do not think, as God keeps reminding me and reminding me, we are not going to see the fullness of it if we think we have to work for them. We will see the fullness when we recognize we are always with the Father. We are abiding in him. He is within us, and all he has is ours. It's our inheritance. And all he is meant to be in us, since we are supposed to reflect him and be his glory really on the earth. That's how we glorify him. So go be his son, not his servant. All right, let that service flow out of that relationship. All right, that was my quick message. Thank you for listening. Love you guys. I'll talk to you next time, and it'll probably be on intimacy once again. All right. Thanks so much. Bye bye.